Hello and welcome to the garden on a bit of a blustery evening, but thankfully a little bit of a cooler one. There are so many things in full bloom and I'm really happy with how the gardens are looking at this point. The upper garden has some nice things in bloom. There's some vegetables hidden back there too, but this Rudbeckia is definitely the star. There's some snapdragons blooming in behind, a little bit of phlox, and a full row of pro-cut sunflowers for market bouquets. I am still in the process of getting these wood chips down, so don't mind that. But it hasn't been all successes up here because the asters have not really loved this wet weather. Some of them have started to rot. They've been a bit droopy and I've been ripping them out. Here's a good one though. I think it might even be tall enough to cut. So this is a spider chrysanthemum mix. It is an aster, but it's called chrysanthemum mix. This one back here looks pretty healthy, but there's no buds on them yet. Most of them though look like this, wilting, and they are rotting from the base. So yeah, that just came right out. You can see how it's all brown right at the base. And that's what happened to most of them. The pennycress in behind it has been really good, but it's finishing now, so I do need to pull that out. And I've done quite a bit of that though. You're gonna see a lot of bare rows where I've just finished pulling things out. And starting tomorrow, we're going to get a few rainy days, so I'm gonna be direct seeding a whole bunch of things. We have a mishmash of things in the kids' garden. This is just whatever they want, basically. Some leftover snapdragons, some pansies, some watermelons, looking very happy. Oh look, looks like a blue jay feather. Let's leave that there. Some sunflowers, even some pepper plants, and I think I have some nasturtiums in there too. Back here, I'm working on starting a brand new garden. There are a few shrubs in here at the moment. It's very wet along the back end, so I'm gonna put a couple of dappled willows back there. Now this is just started, so I'm only gonna do some shrubs at this point, and then next year we'll start filling it in with some bulbs and some perennials. It's basically going to be an extension of this shade garden back here, which is really, really good, but not a lot of color to see at this point in time. Just the tail end of that foxglove and a few aquiledias right here at the front. This little shade garden is under a big old oak tree, and we have a bench here to sit because it's shaded as of about lunchtime. And it is one of the few shady areas that we do have to sit. So the kids' sandbox is here. It's a great place for them to play when it's just too hot in the sun. And that's why we put their little kids' garden here. So the plan is to get rid of all of this grass and then start working my way over this way. So we've seen the asters and the cress. There's a few asters right there that have not bloomed yet. One of them does look a little sad. But just in front, I have a couple of these sunball crasspedias, and they are just starting to color up. I spent 2 years looking to get these seeds, so I'm excited for these. I do have a few more in a different location as well. So, still some buds coming. This one doesn't look like it's developing evenly, but a few of them are looking really good. I have a basket with me because I suspect that I have some gherkins ready to pick. Maybe a few other things. So I can't forget to bring that around with me. The next few rows are also mostly cut flowers. And it's looking a bit sparse because I did a big harvest this morning. So this is what's left of the annual phlox. I have two different varieties here. This one is white and this one is more of a beige, light caramel color. This is a wild Rudbeckia that just seeded itself and I've left it here and it is just glorious. I'll likely move it because I don't really want it here, but the size of the flowers are perfect and it's really, really been loved by pollinators. Other than that, this row is mostly snapdragons. I'm loving this color, but it's a little bit short. I have been cutting a lot of it anyway, but what is left just doesn't really have a lot of flower buds on it. Likely a result of the really dry May when they were developing. But the ones I did cut were lovely. Now these, I know a few of them had fallen over. I believe these might be a Potomac Sunrise mix. Don't quote me on that, but I am really enjoying them. And then this nice deep purple. which has fallen over. So the ones that are left are basically bent, maybe have a little bit of bug damage, or just haven't developed enough to be nice enough to use in bouquets. I have a couple plants of this schizanthus, which is angel's wings. These are basically a very small version of straw flower. They get really, really tall. They're great for dried flowers, but you want to catch them at this stage and not this stage, because these lovely little yellow centers turn brown when they end up looking a little bit like this when they're dry. I don't really grow a full row of anything, and that's not really by design. It just sort of works out that way. This row has some basil transplants, which were a little bit overgrown, but I did direct seed. There's some little babies right there. And I have about 10 feet of scabiosa or behind that. Oh, there's one starting. That'll open up within a couple of days. That's a big fluffy poppy right there. And then this, the rest of the row, I can't remember what this is. I'm gonna have to go check my seed packets. Something that I'm growing for dried flowers, but I don't know what it is. If you know what this is, please tell me. I would be very appreciative. Sunflowers are very close. I don't see petals yet in these. These may be plum. They look like they're a bit of a darker color. And then some auric putting on some height. This was caramel apple mix from Floret. They all came up purple except for this little green one that's actually looking a little bit sad. And true to form, a couple of wayward bricks and some green onions that I stuffed behind the sunflowers. In the back is my very wild asparagus just growing away happily. You only harvest asparagus for about 6 weeks or so in the early spring, and then you have to let it grow, and that is definitely the point we are at now. Next, in the vegetable and herb department, we have a couple of herbs back here. I've got chervil and then parsley. They're just starting to grow on well. There's a couple of little kale plants back here. Dill self-seeds in this garden a lot, and I've picked most of it, but you are going to see a few popping up here and there. These are beets. Not a decent size yet, but it's still early. Then there's a little bit of carrots. We don't need a ton of one thing all at once, so this row is broken up into 5. So here's carrots, space number 3. Now these butter crunch lettuce did have radishes growing in between. The radishes are all gone, but we have eaten quite a bit. And then turnips. Turnips is one of those things I said I wasn't gonna grow, but I just hate wasting seed. Oh yeah. See, those are a really good size now. We've been cutting those. Oh, there's a good one. We do have to pick these pretty young because we have bugs that get into them when they get a little bigger. But I much prefer the taste of them when they're small anyway. Next row has onions and shallots, and I see the top starting to flop over on these, and shallots don't get that much bigger than this, so I think I might be able to pull these soon. Maybe a little longer for the onions. Some of them look pretty good though. This was a mixed bag that I bought, so we have white onions. Nope, those are yellow skinned onions, sorry. You could mistake those for white onions until you see the actual white onions. These are yellow, those are red onions, and then those are most definitely the white onions. Behind those, we have weed. We have some of my cilantro that is starting to go to seed. We got so much off of these couple of plants that are here, but I did seed a little bit more, and that's starting to come up nicely. Then we have more weeds. And then we have calendula. Behind that, the columbine and the delphinium are pretty much done. There's a few little side shoots on this delphinium still flowering away, but that's going to get cut down pretty soon. These were fantastic, but these are going to get moved into a perennial bed. Now, I used to call this the vegetable garden, but it's the majority of it is flowers this year, so we're calling it the upper garden. We're in the process too of putting in some brick edging, just so I don't have to recut the edge, and we're only about 1/3 of the way down. Oh, forgot my basket. One last look. I almost forgot these glads on the corner. A few of them starting to show color, but I did actually cut 4 or 5 this morning, and they are in the house. So those of you who have been watching for a little while will notice that we did finally put the arbor back up, and that was no small feat because it involved drilling into concrete. Ignore the mess that is around it. Those of you that are new, this is an old building foundation that we inherited with this property, and it would be a beast to try to remove. But even though it's a bit of an eyesore, it's a really good space for the kids to drive tricycles, play with sidewalk chalk. As you can see, we have a pool set up, which is fantastic, and we even build a little skating rink here in the winter. So it is not much to look at, but we've got a little bit of a patio garden, some stuff growing in pots. There's more vegetables here, actually. There's a little dwarf branching sunflower. There are some potatoes that the kids planted. That empty pot is actually a dahlia that I almost forgot to plant. We have a dwarf tomato called Red Robin from West Coast Seeds, and that is about 12 inches, and it is not going to get much taller than that. This tiny Tim was supposed to be the same size, but it's about double the height. We have sweet potatoes, we have some rosemary, a very large thyme that needs cutting back. And funny, I'm not sure what this is, but it's an annual that I stuck in last year and it survived the winter. No, you know what? It survived 2 winters. So this pot I didn't do much to this year except stick some gazanias that I grew from seed. It's just a little grouping of pots, but as that grows up, it's going to help to hide the view of all this concrete from the other side. A little bit of an eyesore, but it could be worse. So this we are calling the lower garden, and I've been working on updating the wood chips. You can see them there, all the nice new ones. I haven't quite got this far yet, but that's coming. This had mostly overwintered spring blooming things. So the larkspur, which I've left just a few that I'm going to cut, and a couple in the back that I'm going to let go to seed. This is going to get cleaned up and reseeded. There's a few snapdragons left back there, but this is going to get cleaned up and reseeded. I accidentally had most of this row of snapdragons that were too short to use for cutting, so they came out. The yarrow was gorgeous, and some of it still is. There's a few stems left there, but that's going to get cut back, and I think I'm going to move this too, but that might be a big job. This was a seed mix, and I think my favorite one has to be this buttery yellow. This one was Carnations and Bells of Ireland. That is gone. The Rudbeckia. This is the star of this garden right now. Look at these colors. I love growing seed mixes because you get all kinds of things. This bright yellow is just fantastic. These extra fluffy ones, just loaded with petals and all kinds of other things. And then, of course, these great big ones here. These are going to get moved, I think. And this row, I think, will stay here. I have some more seedlings. I'm not loving this cherry brandy. Not sure if this is what it's supposed to look like. Not loving it. There are a few plants that are borderline doubles that I'm liking a bit more, but these ones are hit or miss. I do have some more seedlings though that will go in the back to fill in this row, but I think those ones are going to move. Not going to get rid of them. They're going to go in a perennial bed somewhere. And then these ones here in front can move to the other row to fill it out. And we have another empty row ready to be seeded. I almost forgot my beautiful little rose. This was a cutting taken from a friend's garden. It's a climbing rose, and it's overwintered twice in this pot, so it's a little bit sad. Still blooming though. I'm going to repot it, clean it up a bit, and then I'm going to train it to go up this arbor. Much the same story with these raised beds. The feverfew is done. This is basically the last bloom head, and I couldn't stand to rip it out. It's just too gorgeous. So I'll cut it, and then these are going to come out. I'm going to seed some fresh plants for next year. Lisianthus is looking really, really good. We have 50 plants, which is much better than the 13 I had last year. This bed was oregano. I did rip all that out. That's ready for seeding. This bed has my saffron crocus most of the year, but at the moment I have some straw flowers. and some very fluffy calendula planted in front of it. I'm not sure that I'm loving this variety. The middle looks kind of messy. Even the fresh new ones has a ton of petals, but just a little bit, I'm not sure what it is. I'm just not loving them. But the straw flowers are great, and I mean, I guess it doesn't matter if I love the calendula. If it's good for pollinators, that is good enough for me. My elephant garlic has come out of this bed. I need to clean those up and put them away, and then that bed is ready for seeding. And this one is the French tarragon. By far our favorite herb, but I don't use quite this much. I cut and sell some of it and use it as bouquet filler. And that reminds me, I should do that. A giant forest of tarragon. Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to cut a whole bunch actually. At this point, your herbs can start to look a little tired. And you can shear the whole thing back to the ground. This goes for oregano, chives, tarragon, thyme. Maybe not all the way down to the ground with thyme, but pretty close. And often you'll get a nice big second flush. Ah, mosquito. The breeze seems to have calmed down, which is good for filming, bad for mosquitoes. There we go. And the last two beds have lilies. There's two varieties blooming at the moment, and I don't actually know what either of them are. There's a beautiful white one, and then this beautiful, don't know whether to call it pink or red. It's a little bit in the middle. Beautiful though. These are downward facing. They're Asiatics, so those I won't use in bouquets. This one though I have been using. And as I'm cutting them, I'm planting some zinnias in between. I'm just testing this one. If it wiggles back and forth, it's not quite ready to be cut. And then the bed behind is mostly Oriental hybrids, so these ones have not flowered yet. They are the ones with the smell. Take it or leave it. Some people love the smell and some don't. I love it. But I don't make a lot of bouquets with Oriental lilies because I know that that smell is not for everyone. The greenhouse is looking nice though. Landscaping around the greenhouse is mostly herbs, so we have a couple varieties of oregano, some chives, a couple varieties of thyme. There's, I think, silver edge thyme, and then lemon thyme, which is amazing. Not the best flavor when it's flowering though, so that's going to get cut back. And then some sage, chocolate mint in its own raised bed to keep it contained, and the savory, winter savory variety so that it is perennial. And here is a common problem we get with mint, some pest damage. So at this point what I need to do is come through here and just shear that right off to the ground. Just like I mentioned earlier with the tarragon and oregano, you can do that with mint too. And in the greenhouse, some squash that I still have not planted. If you haven't planted your squash yet, don't feel bad. It's getting to almost too late, maybe, but I did the same thing last year and we did get a little bit of productivity. The greenhouse does have in-ground plantings, so we have a couple more of those dwarf red robin tomatoes, some peppers. There's a tomato in the corner, and we don't have to worry about wind in here, so I mostly just wind it around bamboo canes and they stay there pretty good. I can clip them there if I need to. A few more peppers. There is ginger and turmeric in pots. And I think I have a little bit of rosemary planted in the ground back there. Yup, I do. Honestly, a lot of these transplants up here needed to go. It's just too hot for them. This, what is this, magic carpet thyme? Yeah, those are perfectly happy, but everything else up there has pretty much had it. And then a few more tomatoes. It's really hard to film in there because I back up and I run into a pot. This is only 6 by 9 feet. We built it out of recycled windows. Very low cost, painted it purple because, well, why wouldn't we? I had some help putting up the walls, but I built most of the roof and the door completely by myself, so I'm pretty proud of that. Even though it is not that big, it is absolutely fantastic. For a Zone 6 garden where we get multiple feet of snow in the winter, it's really nice to have this indoor space. And we do have a few more raised beds on the other side. They have already been flipped over from ranunculus and tulips for cut flowers. This one now has some bells of Ireland around the front. It is not a good year for bells of Ireland. I mean, they've got bells, but they don't have height, which is fine. I may leave them there just to go to seed and collect seed for next year. Last year I had fantastic growth on these, but not everything does well every year. These were dahlias that I planted just as tubers. They're starting to come up nicely. This one is the same. I did this about 3 weeks earlier, so there's the difference in growth. A few asters in the front, which are doing much better than the other ones. And we are very shortly going to have our first cutting dahlia. So very excited about that after the disaster of a dahlia year that we had last year. Bed number 3 has some tomatoes and some cucumbers and a bunch of nigella self-seeded next to it. I like to use nigella pods though, they're really good dried. So, oh look, there's one. Oh, that one's pretty cool too. Different varieties have different shaped pods. This one's fun. So I'm gonna let those go and then dry them. Now this is the reason I brought a basket, because I do believe we may have some gherkins back here. Aha, gherkins. Cucumbers and gherkins are one of those things that if you miss it, it can very easily get way too big. Every year I say that I want to make gherkins. These are almost borderline too big for those little sweet gherkins, those really tiny ones. So I might use the bigger ones for dills. We were in the pool just before filming this and suspect my hair is about 3 times as big as it was when we started, but that's because it was wet. This is closer to what I want for gherkins. The flower is still attached. That's what we're looking for. Let's see if we can find a few more of those. Here we go. That's the very first cucumber harvest of the season. 10 whole future pickles. That bed back there used to hold a couple of 100 daffodils. I've ripped all that out. They are being stored for fall planting in a bed that at this point does not exist. And then the garlic has not come out yet. I know I've harvested all the elephant garlic. It'll likely be another 2 weeks for these. There's close to 200 cloves in there, and I'd like to see about half of the foliage die back before these ones come out. And oh look, blueberries. A little bit sour. That's okay. That is the entire backyard garden. I don't think I've missed anything. We're going to head out to the front because I'm slowly working on getting rid of all that grass as well. Little by little. We're not going to get rid of all the grass, but the vast majority of it for sure. Now these front beds actually look pretty good. We have some lavender at the front. Some I've let bloom and some I've cut, and it's drying down in my dried flower room, which was my seedling room. Maybe I'll show you that sometime. This garden is just a giant mishmash of things. There's some phlox, some crocosmia, quite a few lilies, some daylilies, some daisies. This is where most of my peonies were. I would say it's more of a productive garden than it is a decorative garden. But what I'm loving right now is the fact that we have lots of different varieties of lavender. We have light purple, we have a darker purple, and we have the white, which I think is elegant snow. We have some herbs in here too, quite a few lilies. This apricot fudge, I never know really what to think about that. It's an interesting one. It's an Asiatic lily. Different form. It needs some deadheading, but when the buds are developing, they don't really look all that great. Each flower really only gets a couple of days. But ignoring that one, there's a lot of other really gorgeous ones. There are cosmos, quite a bit more lavender there on that side. There is one very specific thing that I want to show you. My Mechanopsis seedlings, my blue Himalayan poppies, there they are. They are growing. They are not growing super fast, but they are growing. This one is Bailey. And then back here I have Lingholm. So there's one of these, and then there's two of the other ones. Nothing special in here. It needs edging and a little bit of weeding. And then this is mostly cut flowers. This has grown a lot. I've started to cut this Bupleurum right here. That's looking pretty good. We have straw flowers, we have status. This larkspur needs to come out. It has all bloomed out now. But what I'm really excited about are the sunflowers. Not quite, maybe tomorrow. The Eryngium. This is blue glitter sea holly grown from seed last year. It is so blue. The camera's really not doing it justice. Maybe it's because it's almost dark out. This was Cinnaglossum, Chinese forget-me-not, I think. We had pink, we had blue. The blue color is gorgeous, but we also had this light lilac color that I didn't order. It was in with the blue. I've got one here set aside that I'm going to collect seed from. There's also a little bit of catmint. There's a little bit more lavender out front. Now in the front, these are where I have the really nice Chabot carnations. Oh, I see one just opening right there. I think I have a few of those, and there are some cosmos coming up in between that I just left. So the Chabot carnations are yellow. There's another one down there. And I also have a light pink too, which is over here. Yeah, that's a light pink. Now back to the status. This must be apricot. This one is new to me this year. I am loving the apricot. Anybody who remembers this space last year, I got almost zero production out of it last year, but look at it this year. It is so lush. This space had cress, which has come out, and this Cinnaglossum is going to come out also. So I'll probably be direct seeding a whole bunch more sunflowers right here. Well, I think we've just about covered everything, and I've avoided the worst of the mosquitoes. So I'm gonna take my tarragon and my gherkins, and I'm gonna head in. And I look forward to seeing you all back here in the garden before too long. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.